sitting here at home today. Normally we would be doing all of this from the St Mary's building, but because I'm having to socially isolate this week, I am having to do it from home. But I'm here with you in spirit, and we have a wonderful morning lined up with you. We got Mike, we got the wonderful Peace Centre, Peter Adams preaching. We got a green room with Kathy Nobles in it. It is going to be a fantastic time. Now, I'm also in a little bit of a celebratory mood as it is my birthday coming up in a couple of weeks. I will be turning the grand old age of 30 years. And what's great about that is I don't actually need to be in church to hear you all singing at me. So that is a real advantage to be doing this from home. Now. We're going to be kicking things off with a little bit of an intro from Mike, who's going to be taking us through just a time of reflection and about a few things. And we're also going to be hearing a little bit from Peter Adams and Kathy Nobles. So let's go to them.
Well, good morning. Welcome to St Mary's today. It's great to be here this morning, and I'm here with Peter Adams and Kathy from our Peace Centre. So, Kathy, Peter, tell us what we're doing today.
Okay, we're really excited that we're going to be starting a series from the Peace Centre over the next few months on the theme of Jesus, truth and grace. So I'm going to be launching that now, partly to give the whole church a sense of what we're going to be thinking about, hopefully inviting some of you along. So I'll be preaching later, and then we'll have a conversation, Kathy, myself, and you around that theme, and take it from there.
That's great. So I look forward to that. So we're going to have a normal shape of Holy Communion with Peter speaking, some time with me, Peter, and Kathy, and chatting. But we're going to begin with prayer this morning. So I'm going to lead us as we come to the God who is peace and brings peace into the world through Jesus Christ. So God of peace, you call us to peace. Peace within and peace without, peace before and peace behind, peace on right and peace on left. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. The hatred which divides nation from nation, race from race, class from class, Father, forgive. The desires of people and nations to possess and control, Father, forgive. The anger, fear and pain in our hearts, which we store up and hurt our relationships. Father, forgive. And I pray that you would know the grace of God to enable you to be kind, tender-hearted and forgiving. For Jesus' sake. Amen. Amen.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Mike. Okay, we're going to move on to a time of worship and a bit of a mixture today of different worship going on. So because I've been having to quarantine myself, I've had to get some other people helping out, getting some worship in. So we have the wonderful Aunt Noble giving us a bit from home, and Richard and the team were actually in church, and I managed to sneak one of those songs in. So we're going to head over to them now. Oh, just to say, this is also a perfect moment to give, if you can. So do head over to stmarys.org/giving, and that will give you all the information you need to give. Great way is to send in a text on our text system. You can probably hear Ryan in the background. He's excited about you giving too. But there's also other ways like bank transfers and any way that will work for you. So do head over to there. Right, now over to the various worship teams.
I lay it all down. it won't let go. I know it won't. I know your thoughts, your plans for me are good. I know you hold my future and my hope. Your promises never fail. Your promises never fail. Healing, freedom, you speak favor over me. Faith is breaking all impossibility. Your name has overcome. Your name alone. I know your thoughts, your plans for me are good. I know you hold my future and my hope. Your promises never fail. Your promises never fail. Your promises never fail. Your promises never fail. I'm standing on every promise that you make. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Oh Jesus, I will trust every word I hear you say. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Oh, I am standing on every promise that you make. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Oh Jesus, I will trust every word I hear you say. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. I know your thoughts, your plans for me are good. And I know you hold my future and my hope. Your promises never fail. 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 Your promises never fail.
Amazing, guys. It is great to worship with you all. Oh, don't we have such talented, wonderful people in our church? Right, now we're going to go on to our reading and then our sermon and then the green room all mixed together as it's all kind of in one time. So over to the team.
The peace of the Lord be...
Sorry about that. Wrong button.
Our reading this morning is from John 1:9 through the end. The true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not receive him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling amongst us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testifies concerning him. He cries out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me." From the fullness of his grace, we have all received one blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but God, the one and only, who is at the Father's side, has made him known. This is the word of the Lord. Amen.
Great, thank you, Kathy. I think contrary to much traditional art, Jesus didn't live his life walking on the clouds. He lived and he had his relationships in the midst of poverty and wealth, conflicted relationships and joyful, happy families, among the sick and the healthy. He navigated through a range of social issues, as challenging as any we face today. Religious division in his own faith community, between occupying Roman powers, compromised Jewish authorities, and those who would openly foment rebellion. He talked to law-abiding Jews, ritually polluted people, tax collectors, and sinners who were cut off from society. He regularly met people who deliberately tried to manipulate and exploit divisions in society. Last week, in our sermon here at church, Archdeacon Dave spoke about the story of the Pharisees trying to trick Jesus over paying tax to the Romans. That's in Matthew chapter 22. In the same chapter and on the same day, we have him with another group of religious leaders trying to catch him out over questions of marriage and divorce. Elsewhere, we find him meeting a woman caught up in adultery, a woman who was sick and ritually unclean from blood loss. We see him with the poor, little children, Roman army officers, tax collectors, grieving parents. He navigated family tensions in his own family, but also between Martha and Mary. He was a guest at a wedding that had run out of wine, with all the pressure that brought about. And he constantly dealt with ambitious, sparring followers. At the heart of our reading were these words: "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling amongst us. We've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." Well, also, contrary to much art, when people saw the glory of God in Jesus, they didn't see a halo around his head. They saw a person like you and I. What was the glory they saw? I want to suggest that it was probably the fact that in him were both grace and truth. Jesus came and he lived grace and truth in the midst of all those situations I've described. Literally, he came and pitched his tent. That's what the words "lived among us" means, is translated from. He pitched his tent. Just like you would have seen in first century Galilee and Judea, you would have seen Bedouin tents all around the place, just as you do when you go to that area today. And in the middle of each situation he came into, he literally pitched his tent. He spoke truth that cut to the core. Light, we're told in the passage Kathy read, light had come into the world and it showed situations for what they were. But truth alone can leave us naked, vulnerable, and unworthy. Jesus never left it there. He also demonstrated grace, kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. Picture a Bedouin tent. Picture that tent in the midst of conflicted situations. And imagine him at the door, of that tent, beckoning us in, saying, come, talk. Let's talk this through. Imagine that tent. The tent poles were truth and grace. Jesus at the door, full of truth and grace, beckoning us in into that place full of truth and grace. That's where he dealt with the problems. That's his lesson to us. We're called to be Jesus in our world. I came to the conclusion many years ago that it was hard to be those things. I was a person who was passionate for justice and truth. And sometimes my passion and truth get the better of me. Passion for truth get the better of me. Sometimes I can be ungracious. Sometimes I have put truth and justice aside, and I'm overwhelmingly full of compassion, and I somehow miss the issue. But Jesus did both. I found Psalm 26 to be a helpful prayer. Verses 2 and 3 say, test me, Lord, and try me. Examine my heart and my mind. For I've always been mindful of your unfailing love and have lived in reliance on your faithfulness. Unfailing love, the Hebrew word keseth, or grace, loving kindness, mercy. And then he says, I've lived in reliance on your faithfulness. Literally, the word faithfulness means truth. You see those words echoing themselves through Scripture. Those pairs of words found in many places. For me, the most interesting, the most fascinating is Psalm 85. Oops, sorry, I'm wobbling my camera there. Truth, Psalm 85 verse 10 says, truth and mercy have met together. Justice and peace have kissed. This is not just a description. This is an event. Literally, truth and grace encountering each other, engaging each other, doing business. That's what the words met in this means. They were doing business together. Truth and grace. And we've got two other characters joining in the conversation. We've got justice and peace. And they're not just meeting, they're kissing. That kissing is about intimacy. I love the word encounter. It describes an unexpected meeting, often with an enemy. Somebody who's conflicted, we're conflicted with something, a difficult situation, an unpleasant situation. But that word of encounter also has a sense of process. There's a definition I've come to love, which is, it says an encounter is a meeting that results in love. Encounter is a word that's been taken over in part by the sex industry. I used to organize cross-cultural encounters, especially in China. I used to call them China Encounters. So for a time, I registered a website domain called China Encounters, but I soon realized it was bringing me rather a lot of very dodgy emails and spam. I decided that name probably wasn't worth it. Unlike you, I can actually see Josh in this, and Josh is having a good old laugh over there on the other screen. Our aim in China Encounters obviously wasn't about sex. It was about bringing British Western young people together with Chinese people in China. Kathy came on our first tour in 2001. Those were meetings that resulted in love because we became so caught up in each other's lives as we shared our stories, as we shared the truth, as we talked about justice. We said what would make for peace, and we exercised compassion and forgiveness. Where Jesus went, he created a place where truth mercy, justice, and peace encountered each other. Just bring those two extra words into the tent. We've got justice and peace now. So we've got 4 tent poles. What a stable tent that is. The tent you can see is a tent that will stand force 10 gales. It's a rigorous tent. It's a safe place. The poles stand up because they're working together. At the entrance to the tent, again, is Jesus, full of grace, beckoning us in. Come and talk about the issues. Truth, honesty, clarity, transparency, vulnerability. We see each other as we are. Without the presence of truth, conflicted situations will never be resolved. Yet truth leaves us vulnerable. Mercy, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance. And you start. Grace, healthy relationships relying on a good dose of grace. Without forgiveness and compassion, healing is out of the question. Yet on its own, mercy can be superficial. Justice, the opportunity to put things right, equalizing opportunity, rectifying wrong, making restitution. Without it, brokenness festers and continues. Peace, harmony, unity, well-being, feeling of respect and security, place of honor. But it must be for all. Jesus stands at that tent and he beckons us in to that place. Jesus wants us to create those tents, to come and pitch his tent among us in our difficult situations. It's my experience and it's Kathy's experience that when we create places where we can be attentive to these 4, then we can have the difficult conversations. We can meet people with very different views. We can be friends. This is a place of reconciliation, and it's a place where Jesus hangs out. Thank you. Kathy, why don't you come join me? And I think Mike's going to join us as well, and we're going to have a chat. Mike, come on in.
Thank you, Peter. That was great. Really interesting. And very thought-provoking. Who wants to take us forward?
Kathy. You've been there. We've done it together. We've done it separately. Tell us what you've experienced.
Well, I think from my experience of living in the Middle East and working in a junior high classroom, there's always going to be conflict in our lives. But I think it is exactly the way Pete just described, this process of coming to the tent. And really that tent has the ability, if we hold together with grace and a willingness to build a safe space, we can talk about fractious issues. And I'm looking right now at the society in which it is being unfolded in America. We need a lot of safe spaces. Whoever gets elected, there's going to be a lot of work to do. And so I think I want to see the church be a part of that solution, and because we know how to do this. And so this is where I'm keen on how do we come and learn these skills. And I think putting them alongside the soul space skills, because we need the understanding of what Jesus is all about, hooked into those joy skills to be able to maneuver relationships and have peace, we hope.
I think, can I ask a question then? Just because like if I'm listening to it, it's like, I mean, I enjoyed that concept of like you got a conversation with truth and grace, justice and peace in the room, and having a conversation or maybe an argument, or maybe an argumentative, friendly conversation. And because when I put them together, they aren't necessarily together. They're happy to be together, but it isn't necessarily polite. And so for those of us who are listening and going, okay, that's what For You Peace is about, where do you see that modeled? Because it's one thing to hear the concepts, it's another thing to see it in life. So where do people like me, other people listening, where do we see that modeled?
I think, Mike, for myself, I came up with this, well, my engagement with this picture, and Kathy and I would sort of journey together on various projects over a number of years. And it was actually in the days after 9/11, 2001, when we were desperately thinking, how do we look at this world? I was reading some of this again, this theme, and I realized that one or two situations I'd been in had a key point of unity. I had responded to situations where there was a lot of brokenness with particular humility. I had actually come with an apology. So on one occasion in the Middle East during the reconciliation walk, which Kathy was the field director for, I'd been sitting in a room of Islamist extremists, radical politicians. And I brought a message of apology for the Crusades where Christians had come and fought Muslims. And I looked at these senior leaders of this organization and they were in tears. And they began to share, but actually what you said is they could have responded argumentatively, but somehow or other my apology, my humility in that situation had brought grace into that place. And so they just shared their story. And our response at the end of that was to begin to be able to talk about it, but in a very different way. And I realized I'd had those experiences two or three times. I've had them probably on a handful of occasions since, in a very, very, very obvious way. I've had them a lot more generally many times. So I've learned, I suppose I go in thinking, how can I create this place of safety? And often that's about my humility. Where it isn't about my humility, then I know that they sometimes go wrong. So there's a converse there.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Kathy?
I was thinking of a meeting I went to in Beirut, and I was told, if we're going into this meeting, you need to understand that this political leader is quite a radical. Not in the Muslim sense, but just radical in his own sense of, I have a group behind me. And he's probably going to be quite rude. All of the setup was fairly negative. And we arrived into the meeting, Liz and I, and we had the apology. We knew what we were going to say if this was dealing with the reconciliation walk. And he basically, when he came, he said, can you tell me what you're doing? And I set out the truth of what we were doing. And he basically whispered to the very tall men with guns behind him, and while I was talking. And then when I stopped, he thanked me. And the gentleman that came back into the room put in a VCR to show us a film about the Boy Scouts that this man sponsored. And isn't that great? Because I was like, I could see from Liz's face, she was so nervous. And inside I was butterflies of like, what are we going to listen to next? And we got out of the car after graciously having wonderful conversation, exposing a little of his politics and me explaining a little bit about us. And we got out to the car, and the gentleman that was with us all the time, who was Lebanese journalist, he got in the car and he said, I have never seen grace undo another human being. Because how could he respond but with goodness? So I think that there's a magic of God that happens when we do it, even when we don't even know we're doing it.
The more challenging the situation, the more the grace that's needed, but also the grace that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly one or two of our early journeys in China, we saw that happening. I remember it happening when I had a room full of, I had a workshop between militants who came in from the jungle in Colombia in the early 2000s, and the paramilitaries on the right. And they sat in a workshop for a week, and we created that place where there was grace there. And I don't know what was going on, but I certainly wasn't in control of it. But somehow God did some things. But actually bring it down to earth, I've seen it happen in conversations on the streets of Luton, where I've sat down with problem people, and somehow or other we ended as friends. I wish in many cases that had continued, because I had to be honest, it didn't always. In some cases it had.
Yeah.
There's not a magic in it. It's about starting something and then you having the will to carry on, but also them having the will to carry on in it.
But Mike, can I make one other comment? Because I think coming down to personal, family and friends right now in communities here, which were divided over Brexit or over the COVID-19 and all the regulations, or everything at home, it's going to be up to conversations at this level of relationship where we can work out these differences to say we may differ on the way we see things, but it doesn't mean we need to sacrifice relationship, but we need the grace and the courage to do it and learn to do it rightly, to just rebuild, I think, the fabric of integration within ourselves and be a healthy witness to the world.
Yeah,
I think that's the basis on which we decided we needed to create this course that I talked about. We should run over the next few months. There'll be some details I know on the community page, and you can also find them on the website that'll be coming up on the screen as once Josh has edited that in a minute.
What's the title of that course?
Pardon?
What's the title of the course?
Jesus, Truth and Grace.
Yeah.
And there'll be 9 reflections like this, sort of like we've just had, 10 to 12 minutes, run each month. And then there'll be 9 webinars on the following week, where people can join us for an hour and a quarter, go a bit deeper into that subject, go away with a bit of reading, talk about how to do it. And we're going to be talking about difficult issues that Jesus encountered and how he walked through those. So, for example, a bit more about, religious division, a bit about mammon, a bit about working together with civic powers and working in conflict and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting for those people who've done Joy Skills with me and Ruth. Then I've got a planner that I put together, and which has 13 topics in it. And one of the topics is this thing of if you've got joy for relationships and you're connecting with people, how do you bring in truth? How do you bring in that sense of transform? For me, that's about transforming reality. That things can all be all covered